Hi, welcome everybody. This is a little deep dive video that Tyler and I decided to put together for Han2 Data Vault. We recently took the list to Minneapolis. Both did pretty well with it and wanted to just kind of talk through some of the decisions. Tyler, you were the main architect of our particular version of the list since I basically just asked you what deck I should play and you sent me the list. So I'm going to rely pretty heavily on you to talk through a lot of the card choices and everything as we get going. You want to talk a little bit about how we did at the tournament?
Yeah, so overall we did pretty well. For me, went 6-3. One of the higher 6-3s, but ended up just missing out on getting top 64. And then Kevin did pretty well.
Yeah. 19th, went 6-2 in one day one, and then lost my first game in day two, but then went 3-0 after that. So pretty happy with how it turned out. Ended up 19th. So was kind of hoping to get the top Han2. There was another Han2 data vault above me, and then a 2 blue that actually made top 8. So wasn't quite close to that, but still really happy with how it turned out. It was a good performance overall. Pretty pleased with it. All right, well, let's just jump into it, I guess, right? Here's the deck list we played. Anything to call out right off the bat on this?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is beyond the sideboard, but main deck, the Gorilla Attack Pods and the Hammerheads and just high counts were easily the two best cards at stabilizing everything or
Mm-hmm.
closing games and
Absolutely.
just making huge threats.
The three fells is pretty much a mainstay, it seems like, in the deck these days. Actually, I think it was Dameron who won a PQ with the list with three fells in it, which I was really happy to see because I know I played the similar version of the list at a PQ a few weeks before Minneapolis, and I was not running fells. And in talking with Tyler and Derek and some others after that, we'd already had started to theory craft, maybe including them to answer Devastators and Cura, so I've been very happy with them in the deck. I think paying 6 for it just to answer the things the deck has a hard time dealing with has not been an issue.
Yeah, I think it completely turns the Cure matchup on its head. Without it, it definitely gets pretty tough because you
Right,
can't just slam a Crate Dragon when they have the Avenger. Like, it just does nothing. So you gotta
exactly.
get it out of the board first.
Absolutely. Let's roll into talking a little bit about some of the notable exclusions from the deck. So we looked through some of the other lists that were present in Minneapolis, and these are some of the cards we've decided we'd call out as far as either why we weren't running them or weren't running as many of them. So first up is the Anakin. I saw some lists even playing three of, but a lot of lists playing one of. Is this something you even really thought about, Tyler, or did it go into testing at all?
At one point, I had one of them in there, but just didn't really feel like it was the fourth and fifth copy of Poe that I would have wanted, and rather would have had some of the higher counts of six drop cards like Wrecker
Hmm.
and having the Gorilla Attack Pods and all the Rykins, just because I feel like they just do more overall in its place. Because the coordinate effect doesn't really happen much, if at all.
That was something on the drive up to Minneapolis. We had like a 6.5, 7 hour drive, and Tyler was talking me through all the lines of the deck. And that was one thing we discussed is how the power turn with the way the deck was built that we took was playing six drops on five resources and then playing another six drop on six resources, kind of relying on the six drops really to be the power level of the deck. And it does seem like some of the other decks were going leaning more into like the five or four resource plays to be more of their power level.
Yeah, we were just kind of leaning more in towards of keeping higher counts of late game cards that will just do more in general. Because that's where like the reinforcement walkers are also in the deck for too. Is just we have much more power late game, but we're not quite as aggressive. But we can still do, six resource, seven resource wins.
We were running one mace, but that seemed to be the low count for the number of maces that people were running. What was kind of your decision on only running one?
The mace generally is only good in a couple matchups like Sabine and Quinlan, and it can flex into Ray, but that one's already a good matchup for us. And Sabine, there was a lot of them. I didn't play against any of them the whole weekend, but even with the mace, didn't really need it. And kind of the same thing with Quinlan is like, even if we're only running one of them, it's pretty often where they'll just pull it all out of our hand with like Spark of Rebellion or
Hmm.
any of the other hand haste. So it really just didn't matter that much anyway.
Spoiler alert, we'll talk more about Mace later, but we'll get to we'll spend a little more time talking about him, but we'll move on for now. So I'd put these next two kind of in the same category to a certain extent, the Adelphi Patrol Wing and the Fleet Lieutenant. We weren't playing either of them. They kind of provide like their main use case I felt like was providing action compression. Fleet Lieutenant sometimes or always an attack boost usually because we run a lot of rebels. Adelphi sometimes an attack boost, but also a space unit. You want to talk through some about why we didn't include these?
We just want, or at least I just wanted to have more two drops that had higher impact that were still rebel. So that's where the Battlefield Marines came in to take its place. It's just something late game that we can also just play for one as a just a 3 attack unit. And then Adelphi, I've slowly started to come more around the idea of it just because it's a 4 attack space unit. And that's one of the things that we definitely will struggle with more, but that's also where the open fires come in too.
Action compression was never something I really felt like I needed in any of my matchups. So in that sense, this is something we've talked about some in general, just around the state of SWU right now, is it kind of feels like decks fall into a couple different categories. Decks that are presenting threats or decks that are answering threats. And it feels like this deck is one that wants to constantly be presenting threats. And Fleet Lieutenant and Adelphi, in my opinion, don't really fall under that category. They're not super threatening in their own right, fairly easy to answer for the most part, whereas the cards that were in the deck instead are cards that typically require an answer from your opponent more quickly. Yeah, I didn't miss
Yeah.
them. The version of the deck I played at the PQ had the Fleet Lieutenants in, and I never really wanted to see them in most matchups, which is why I was very glad to see you hadn't included them, because they were honestly one of the first cards I was thinking about cutting after that PQ. So the Resistance Blue Squadron, is this one you'd looked at?
It's not one that I'd looked at, but there was a couple Han2s around me. One of them, yeah, I think it was in round 5. They were sitting next to me and they were playing it, and actually was doing pretty well for them. But for the most part, I don't know if I'd even want to play it still. I would look more into playing it if we were leaning into like Radis, just because
Hmm.
it's one of those resistance units that can activate the Sentinel on it. But beyond that, I don't think it's entirely needed.
This is one I thought about after seeing it in other people's decks, trying to decide. The extra ping does seem nice, and another space unit also seems nice, but the attack line of it, 3 attack, doesn't answer most of our biggest space problems. Whereas like the Adelphi can potentially kill Falcons or Victor leaders, so I could see maybe
Yeah.
reconsidering the Adelphi Resistant Blue Squadron. Yeah, I haven't been as high on it personally. And lastly, Heavy. This is one that's seen a lot of play in a lot of the deck lists that I've seen, though personally it's not one that I've felt inclined to include. I don't know what your thoughts are on it.
I haven't really felt inclined to play it either. I had tried it at first. The coordinate's really good if you can get it off. Just swinging 6 really early is huge, but largely it's when defeated is mostly irrelevant,
Hmm.
especially because it only hits ground units. And then he also is not a heroic unit too, so that's another thing to consider. Because usually it's pretty often we're bringing back 4 drops with home one late game. He's not one we can bring back.
We already have Cham, so increasing the consistency of your heroic units can be important. Cham's already one we can't bring back. Walker's already one we can't bring back. That one would be very expensive. So I definitely can see that. The next part we wanted to talk through the cards we did include that overperformed for us. Most of these should look familiar, but Wrecker, obviously, it's seen a lot of play in Sabine. I was a little bit down on it before I started playing this version of the deck, just because, you always hear, Wrecker's not as good without ECL. That's been said so many times. But I did find even if I didn't have a timely in hand, this was a really good card to play in a lot of scenarios. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, especially in tandem with Cham, you just have so many really interesting plays that you can make with Wrecker to defeat any of your resources, specifically the vehicles and just other like 3 and 4 cost units that you would be wanting to bring back with home one, and then using Cham on the following turn, just because Wrecker is usually something that they have to answer, and not often can they answer it immediately, but if they do, you still have a lot of time to jam to bring yourself back into even resources to get the home one down the following turn to bring back a three, all those sorts of plays with them.
Defeating the resources, if there was ever anything to kill on the board, I pretty much always did it, just because running 3 Chams meant I could often get back up. Made Cham even better when you weren't playing against ramp decks, because you could still get benefit out of him. I also, the defeating a resource to free something out of your resource row was super impactful. We weren't running tech, or, I mean, the only 2 smuggle cards were Cassian and Timely Intervention.
Yep.
So once something got locked in the resource row, there wasn't a lot of ways to free it except with Wrecker. So there were times I wanted to just see a Wrecker just so I could get a Poe out of my resource row to bring back with home one or something along those lines. So yeah,
Yep.
All-Star of the day performed really well. I also really like that in the Kira matchup, he trades back with both Vader and Maul. Or he trades back with Maul, and if he's undamaged, he potentially lives through the Vader attack and kills Vader.
Mhm.
So yeah, just great stat lines. Overwhelm, if you do have the timely, was massive, could lead to wins just on its own. So yeah, did great. We kind of talked about Cham with that a little bit. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it?
Not really, because I just never had the opportunity to use Cham to for like a resupply where my opponent played, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Either just because we ran out of actions where I swing, they swing, then now I got to do something I can't really just pass,
Right.
or else give up the initiative. And even going and ramping with our opponent really wasn't relevant at all anyway. It was just there as an option.
And at the very least, they knew we were, most Han2's data vaults were running Chams, so even into
Yeah.
the ramp decks, they knew we were playing it. I did have a couple games where I did get to turn 2 Cham after they resupplied, but you're right, it didn't happen a lot right then, but I ramped a lot after Wreckers, and even on turn 3, playing him for ramp was still pretty good in a lot of scenarios.
Against even decks like Quinlan, for example, I was just playing. I would be like, I'll play a 3-drop early. They use their Tarkin Town, and then next turn I'll just play down the Cham. Be like, you have to kill the Cham because 5 attacks a lot on a 25 health base.
And it trades really well into the Quinlan's 3/5s. So
Yeah.
Mon Mothma. I'll be honest, when the first time I saw this, the first iterations of this deck being played on a stream, Mon Mothma, I wasn't so sure how this card would perform in the deck, but it is absolutely an all-star. Any interesting synergies or cool plays that you were able to pull off with it?
Doing the Mon Mothma, and if you have the Bright Hope, it's really good against Quinlan as your opening play, just because a lot of times they don't feel inclined to kill the Mon Mothma early, so then you're able to just get the action Han to bounce her back to hand to just go +2 cards in your hand. So when you finally get into the rebellious hammerheads, it's doing a lot of damage, but also just insulates you from force throw and Ahsoka.
I don't know about you, Mon Mothma never missed for me on the day. Like, it may not have always been the most optimal card in the situation, but it always pulled the card. So she always replaced
Yeah.
herself at the very least with the density of rebels we had.
She always replaced herself. And there was a lot of times too where even on the 6 resource turn, I'll just play her for 1 resource to try and find something that's a
Hmm.
better option. And sometimes just play down a Poe and be like, there's my turn. It's
Yeah.
fine.
Echo Based Defender. This is another one that I kind of went back and forth on in the PQ version of the deck I was playing, just because 3 Health Sentinel wasn't fantastic in the meta. At least it didn't seem like it to me at the time. But card really overperformed for me this weekend. I don't know how you felt about it though.
My favorite part with them is just playing it down turn 1 as a 4 attack unit. And if they're lane dodging you, you can just end the game with the echo-based defender if they have no way to answer it, because their early space is not going to do the same amount of damage that he can do.
So in day 2, the Kira I played, game 1 and game 3 that I had the initiative, I dropped an Echo based defender and was able to turn 2 kill their Pershing with it, which
Mhm.
felt amazing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's crazy.
it did a lot for me on the day. Even, Bright Hope target. The Sentinel was like sometimes impactful, but honestly, it was the realization that I was playing it as a 4 attack 2 drop for the
Yeah.
most part. It made it worth it.
I think it was easily the card that I brought back the most off of Home 1. It was
Mm,
either that or Red 5. I just brought both of them back so often because they're such high
same.
value.
Gorilla Attack Pod. So I think most people were playing this in the list that we were playing two of. I'll be honest, I wish it was three. This card closed out so many games for me. Being as very flexible as a 4/6 or a 6/4 was like Cassian's bigger brother in a lot of the games late game when it would come out ready.
Yeah, it was easily Cassian 4 and 5.
It also had some cool Bright Hope synergy. In that same Kira game, there was a line. I didn't actually need to do it, but I could have attacked with my Gorilla Attack Pod, Bright Hoped it back to hand, replayed it, and swung for 12 that turn if I needed to, which is just game winning in a lot of scenarios. Yeah, it was amazing. This was probably actually my most home one card, especially into the control matchups. I would try and save home one to bring back 5 and 6 drops as much as I could, because the attack pod coming back was just so hard for them to deal with,
Mhm.
and especially playing it undamaged to like play around Fell the Dragon, just limit the removal options. I thought was really nice. Kill a Sentinel, make it bigger.
Yeah, and also just undamaged, it dodges all their removal that is not no glory as well, which is pretty good.
It's pretty good. Dodges takedown and fell if they're playing takedown. Open fire. This was not played in most of the Han2 data vaults that we were able to find in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
What led you to decide to include it?
Our problem matchups in Han 1, or at least our harder matchups, Han 1 and the Vader pilot JTL, they're both pretty difficult, and Millennium Falcons die to open fire. Usually, we can get down our Mon Mothma, search a card, and then have the open fire for their turn 1 play. If they have the AT hauler, then we're already in a rough position, but at the very least, it gives us some out to most of their turn 1 plays. And then for the Vader, it's mostly to kill the Victor leaders, but it can help clean up the clone combat squadrons as well, as those are the two hardest things for us to do
Yeah.
anything about.
Except for the Han 1 data vault that I played and forgot to side them in against them. Besides that match, I think I brought them into almost every matchup, especially Kira. Open Fire killed a lot of Kiras on the day for me. Just a nice, clean answer to get her off the board. It also killed a lot of just other leaders. Our Han leader is one we don't really mind sacrificing. His ability on the flip side, with the way the deck is built, you can double trigger him, but it's not happening a ton. So his 3 damage plus another 4 from an open fire would kill Quinlan. It would kill a lot of the other 7 health leaders that we need to worry about. Anakin, Rey did a lot of work in those matchups for me as well.
It also killed a lot of opposing red fives, which
It
was very
did.
helpful
It
too.
did.
It's
Yeah.
definitely the card we hate to see the most.
Right. Well, and in the mirror, it kills a damaged gorilla attack pod. It kills a damaged Poe. It kills a damaged wrecker. It answers a whole lot of threats. So this is what overperformed. Now on to what underperformed. First one on the list, the Sabine unit. This is the one that on the drive back I brought up. This is the one card in the entire deck that I never played once in 13 rounds in Minneapolis. She never hit the board for me once that I remember. And most of the time that I saw her in my hand, she was the worst option to play. My biggest thing with her is Battlefield Marine is around a lot these days, or at least it seemed like it in Minneapolis. So the one game that I actually was planning on leading off with Sabine, they had the initiative, they played a Battlefield Marine, and it's you can't play it. You just can't drop the Sabine into that. It's a blowout. I think I still had a red 5 in hand that I could play instead, so it turned out it was fine. But there was just never an opportunity I really wanted to play it. The main deck that was playing Village Protectors is Ray, and with Ray giving them an experience token, Sabine's just not as good into them anymore. Seemed mostly irrelevant in most of the matchups.
Usually the times that it's good is just when our opponent hard plays into it, and if they do it, great, but I just wasn't expecting most of my opponents to play directly into it, and most of them did not, if not all of them. And there's also just a lot of 3/3s on ground that, yeah, like Battlefield Marine, where it just makes the card just really bad
Yeah.
when you lose the die roll.
And she's going to be even worse next set. with all the
Yeah.
2/4s on the grounds. I'm not sure how much longer Sabine's going to stay in the deck. Our one of Mace ended up in the underperformers list. Did Mace actually do any work for you all weekend?
I didn't play it a single time, and every time I saw it, it was either resourced or just discarded off of discard effects.
Yeah, same. I think I did play it in one game, and it just bounced into an OB1 and didn't do anything.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
I did play it in one game. There was one game where I played it, but it didn't matter.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
against the Ray Data Vault in round 9 that I played against. I only played it just because I felt like it, but I had something else that I could have done instead that would have been better.
Overall, it just the 5 damage didn't line up well into most of my matchups on the day. If
Its
there,
crates don't matter in the build.
right, if there was maybe more like go wide in the meta, like especially on the ground, like there is go wide, but it's all in space right now, and which makes him pretty useless. There was like the Han2 ECL version, he might be reasonable into that, but I didn't play against any of those, and he got sided out a lot on the day. I don't know how many game twos he made it into the deck for.
Yeah, I don't think he really made it into any game twos except for against Ray, and even then, it just didn't matter.
And the last one on our underperformer list might be a little surprising, but Chewbacca. This card's supposed to be like the Kira killer or whatever. How did you feel about it?
I didn't play against any Kiras at this weekend, so it didn't really matter too much, but I did bring it in against some of the Vader pilot decks, but I didn't get the opportunity to do the pilot plays on like Bright Hope, for example, to build a big wall, but that was the idea behind it for that matchup. Other than that, largely irrelevant against everything else.
Yeah, I did bring it in against the Kiras. I played 3 Kiras on the day. In those 3 matches, there was one game where he was somewhat relevant. But even then, I think I probably had the game sealed up without him. I mean, he kept one Avenger swing from making me sack whatever unit he would have replaced. He killed one Sentinel in that whole game, is all he really did. So yeah, it kind of wished he'd been something else overall throughout the day. Let's talk some about the matchups then. So this chart is from the SWU Competitive Hub going through Han2 Data Vaults matchups from Minneapolis. For the most part, I feel like these numbers are fairly accurate. We'll talk in more detail about like the top 3 good matches and bad matches in the next section. But anything off the bat that you would want to say about any of these?
Probably the biggest one that stands out is Han1 Green and CAD, both at even 35%. I don't think they're good matchups by any means, but they definitely don't feel that extreme. But I'm not entirely sure what the difference is for why those numbers are so low. Han1 Green, we just have a lot of space of our own, and if you're able to just control the board against them early, which you can do fairly often, the only problem is when they get down the Chewbacca and you have no answer.
Yeah, we can talk more about that and some of the lines you can take in that matchup here in the next slide or so. So the good, Kira, Sabine, and Ray, which were some of the most represented decks in Minneapolis, Han2 Data Vault had winning rates into. And I feel like this is fairly accurate numbers. I didn't play any Sabine CLs on the day. Did you happen to run into any of those?
I didn't play it against any Sabine either, so I dodged both Kira and Sabine, but those were ones that I felt confident in already, and the
Same.
stats show it.
Yeah, I played 3 Kiras. One of them was Woo on stream, I believe it was late night stream. Feel free to go watch that if you want an example of how not to play the Han2 Data Vault deck. I don't really feel that bad about it. Game 1, I misplayed a fair bit. Game 2, I didn't draw that great. And the reality is, Woo's probably one of the best Kira players in the world, definitely North America, if not the world. And that probably brings that 55% down to maybe even unfavored for me in the matchup. So he destroyed me pretty well. He drew great and played super clean. But when I look at the other 2 Kira matchups, I 2-0'd another Kira and went then 2-1 a third one. I just felt like between Cassian, Wrecker, and Gorilla Attack Pod, well, specifically Wrecker with Timely Intervention, but then Cassian and Attack Pod without any timelies. We had enough ways to push damage after they had paid 8 for a super laser blast, or paid 9 for an Avenger, or paid 10 for a Devastator, we could still just push 9, 12 damage after they claimed, which felt really good. I definitely think it's not an auto win by any means, but I definitely felt favored in most of the Kira matches I played.
There's just so many ways that you can go about it that just are fairly good for you, and
Hmm.
it's just very flexible.
Ray, how many Rays did you run into?
I ran into two. So the first one I played against was a Tarkentown Ray, and that was Chris Schultz, one of the big Ray players. That one just feels pretty good too because they're on a 25 health base. The hand hate can always get a little weird, but I started Mon Mothma both games. That's what you want to see all the time, and then you go from there. Data Vault's definitely a lot easier to play against because they don't have Tarkentown for one. They don't have as much hand hate, and you can just overwhelm them on the board pretty easily.
I played against one Ray Data Vault, felt basically the same way. Fell the Dragon in both the Kira and Ray matchup, felt really good for answering Luke. I felt like Ray is especially the matchup where Fell can be good in some scenarios, but we just have so many unit cards that answer their threats. Running Architans in the side to answer their home ones, and Wrecker answers Luke pretty well. Poe answers everything well. Yeah, it felt favored for sure.
You're just gonna outgrind them too.
Yeah, I don't know if this deck has really any like quote unquote auto wins, but definitely felt favored into these matchups. Pretty much every deck in this meta has some bad matchups. So let's talk through those. You already said a little bit about how Han and Cad. Don't think it's quite 35%. I'd agree on the Han. I played one Han Data Volt, and it felt very winnable. I misplayed game two, letting a Luke hit me for 16 before I killed it instead of just claiming and felling it next turn. That wouldn't have necessarily guaranteed the game, but at least would have kept me in it. I didn't run into any Cads. How many did you play?
I played against one,
Okay.
and it was close. It's close, but if they're able to get the relentless pursuits, that's where it gets difficult.
Hmm.
Like Zuckus with the relentless pursuit, it's a hard unit to remove. And if we just don't find the fells, that's another matchup where the fells are really strong because their capture units is Zuckus. There's what they're using, and the big cat unit.
Big Cat, yeah.
Yeah.
It's another time though we're answering their leader flip though because we don't have targeted removal for leaders. It's all unit based removal. So holding up a Poe or something to keep their leader hostage so you can one shot it as soon as they flip is pretty important. The Vader. I think actually out of these three, the Vader is probably our hardest matchup, even though the statistics on it doesn't say that. I felt like this one was the worst, though I did dodge it all weekend. I think you played against a couple though.
Yeah, played against it twice. This is definitely one where if they have the overwhelming barrage, the matchup gets really hard. But if they don't have it, then you have a good enough main deck outs to either racing them to the win or having the confiscates Poe and even Fell for the clone combat squadron so that you can get rid of it before they pilot it.
The bombing runs in the side can do a lot of work in the matchup. If they don't have a victor leader, it's pretty much guaranteed to wipe their whole board, which is nice. But even I felt like in testing at least, even if it didn't kill the clone combat squadron, just killing all the TIE fighters shrinks it down so much that it hopefully at least takes you out of range of lethal on the flip turn to
Yeah.
race them. Not that Luke is ugly, but this matchup actually felt pretty rough. I only played it once, and it was my first and only loss in day two was a Luke 1 Data Vault. The guy was played it very well. It didn't help that game two I mulliganed into no turn one, turn two, and turn three. All I played was a confiscate on a Chewie, so wasn't the greatest. I won game one and then lost two and three after that. The biggest thing and something to potentially consider if this deck ever does become more popular is we don't really run any saboteurs in our version of the deck, which means if you let the shields get out of hand, it gets real messy real fast with shielded sentinels. Multiple shields are really hard for the deck to chew through in its current form.
This is one where I would easily expect it to, without a doubt, be our worst matchup, just because we can't push enough damage through everything, and then the restore gets out of control on top of the shields,
Mm-hmm.
and killing the leader is really difficult as well. There's just so many
Yeah.
barriers to get through that it's just not enough time.
If Luke Leader lives for even a couple turns, you've probably already lost the game because he stacked enough shields on Sentinels that you're never gonna make it through it all before you die.
Yeah, the game that you played against him, one of the ones he just built a gigantic ground sentinel wall, and it's
Yeah.
just like there's nothing you can do about it. It's just
It is,
that's
yeah.
what it is.
Well, especially on Obi-Wan because he doesn't die to Fel, so
Yeah.
there's not a lot you can do about him besides just keep ramming things into him and you get finally breakthrough. So we're going to switch over to the updated deck list, some of the changes we made. So all three cards that we said underperformed, the Sabine units, the Mace, and the Chewies are all gone. And we've added some extra cards in for it. Tyler, you want to talk about new additions to the deck?
Now we've swapped to 3 Battlefield Marine, and this was part of the Sabine switch. It's just trades back better, overall better units, still has the same synergies. And then we're trying out 2 of the Phoenix Squadron A-Wings. I don't like that it has 2 health, just because it's one of those things where you can't play it or cheaper late game, but it just gives us a stronger space lane in general. It can still deal with 2 units from the Vader pilot deck, which is good. Mace ended up becoming a tech. It just gives us more late game in game ones, because some of your game ones are going to end up going really long too. So just having one random tech thrown in the deck seems good. And you can also play it early as well as a 2-3, which usually whenever you're playing it, it's going to die to anything anyway. So being a 2-3 isn't going to be as relevant. And then the third attack pod came in for the third Riken, just because Riken, you need it when you're playing against Sabine, for example, but not all the time.
And also in the sideboard, we went up for the Chewies. We went up to a third open fire and a third bombing run, hopefully to shore up the Han 1 and Vader pilot matchups. Felt like, at least in some of your Vader pilot games, it hinged on whether or not you drew the bombing run. So being able to bring three of them in just seemed better than two. And
Yeah,
the open fires into the Han 1 Vader and also Kira matchups, just having answers, being able to have a higher percentage chance of drawing your answer on the turn you need it is pretty critical. So definitely wanted three. I could also see us potentially going through and maybe trying to squeeze some of the open fires main deck. Something we've talked about, but slots are hard. We're not sure yet what we would actually sub out for those.
just into an open meta in general, it's harder to
Right.
have everything covered. So, and I think this main deck has got most things taken care of for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt really strong on the weekend in game 1. I think for both of us, most of our matches that we won 2-0.
Yeah.
Game 1 didn't normally feel like a problem. In fact, I don't know, except in the matches I just lost, I don't know how many game 1s I lost. It felt good overall game 1.
I won every game one in the matches that I won, even the one match where I didn't 2-0 the opponent, it was a 2-1. I still got game one in that one.
Felt good. We'll put a link to this in the video description as well, but this is kind of where we're currently at. We have two more PQs in our area that we'll probably be going to, and this is probably something pretty close to what we will be playing in that. That's basically all we had to talk about. We talked some about all the matchups. Tyler also put a lot of time, and I contributed a small amount in a written matchup guide that we will have a link to in the description of this video. Thanks for getting me back on Han2, Tyler. It's probably still one of my favorite leaders from set 2. I loved him back then, still love him now. Hopefully it still does us well in the PQs coming up and probably will still be a really good leader next set.
Yep, definitely looking forward to continuing playing him. Just a very unique leader in the resource cheating, and yeah, next set is looking to be pretty good as well.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll catch you later on Central Spacers.